He's not dead. Pregnant waitress stopped the billionaire CEO's funeral. What happened next shocked all. The roses were dying. I remember that detail more than anything else. More than the casket. More than the 500 faces dressed in black. More than the weight of my swollen belly pressing against the cheap polyester of my uniform. The white roses cascading down the altar were browning at the edges, their petals curling inward like fists, like secrets trying to keep themselves hidden. And I thought, how strange that a family worth billions would let their flowers die before the funeral even ended. I should have taken it as a sign. My name is Zara Mitchell. I was 29 years old, 23 weeks pregnant, and in exactly 11 minutes I was going to stop a billionaire's funeral by screaming 3 words that would change my life forever. He is not dead. But I did not know that yet. Not as I stood there in that Gothic cathedral on Manhattan's Upper East Side, my feet throbbing in discount heels, my back aching from 6 hours of carrying trays, my baby fluttering beneath my ribs like she knew something I did not. I did not know that the man in that casket was still breathing. I did not know that someone in this room had tried to bury him alive. And I certainly did not know that by the end of this night I would become the most hunted woman in New York City. All I knew was that the roses were dying. And something about this funeral felt wrong. The Cathedral of St. Michael the Archangel had stood on the corner of East 84th Street for over 100 years. Its stone walls had witnessed generations of New York's elite marking their births, their marriages, their deaths. But I had never seen it like this. Every pew was filled, every alcove occupied. The afternoon light filtered through stained glass windows, casting pools of red and gold and blue across the marble floors. The air hung thick with the scent of lilies and incense and something else underneath. Something that smelled like fear dressed up as grief. I moved through the crowd like a ghost. That was the job, after all. Marguerite, my supervisor at the catering company, had made it crystal clear during training. Her French accent sharp as a blade, her eyes even sharper. "You are furniture that moves," she had told me. "You do not speak unless spoken to. You do not make eye contact. You serve, you smile, you disappear." I was good at disappearing. 29 years of practice had made me an expert. Being a black woman in spaces that were not built for me taught you how to move without being seen, how to exist in the margins, how to make yourself small enough that people looked right through you. But today, in this sea of old money and older secrets, I felt more visible than ever. Every glance that slid past me carried a question. What is she doing here? Who let her in? Does she even belong? The answer was simple. Colette's Catering needed servers for this high-profile funeral. I needed the $300 they were paying. My baby needed me to keep standing. So I stood. I carried my silver tray of champagne flutes. Champagne at a funeral. Because apparently grief tastes better with bubbles when your net worth has more zeros than my bank account has dollars. And I tried not to think about how badly my ankles were swelling or how the baby had been pressing on my bladder for the past hour. "Just a few more hours," I whispered to her silently, pressing my free hand against my belly. "Then we go home. We order that cheap Thai food you seem to love. We put our feet up. We survive another day." She kicked in response, hard, like she was trying to tell me something. I should have listened. The mourners around me spoke in hushed tones, their voices carrying that particular reverence reserved for the powerful and the fallen. I caught fragments of conversation as I passed. Such a tragedy. A woman in pearls the size of grapes dabbed at dry eyes. Julian Ashford, dead at 42. Heart attack, they said. Heart attack. Her companion shook his head. The man ran marathons, climbed mountains, had a personal chef monitoring every calorie. How does a man like that just drop dead? "These things happen," the first woman replied, "even to the best of them." But the way she said it, the slight lift at the corner of her mouth, the quick glance she exchanged with her companion, something about it made my skin prickle. I kept moving, kept serving, kept my head down and my eyes open, the way my grandmother had taught me. Grandma Celeste had cleaned houses for families like this for 40 years. She had taught me everything about navigating their world without being destroyed by it. How to read a room. How to sense danger before it announced itself. How to trust your gut even when your mind was telling you to stay quiet. She had also died 6 months ago, cancer. The slow, expensive kind that had eaten through her body and our savings and left me with nothing but her tiny apartment in Queens, a mountain of medical debt, and the baby growing inside me. The baby's father was gone too, Marcus, with his pretty lies and his wedding ring he had forgotten to mention. I had been building this new life alone since the second pink line appeared on that test. 3 jobs, endless exhaustion, counting every penny, but I was doing it. Surviving. That was what Mitchell women did. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory as I worked my way through the crowd. You keep your head down, Zara. You do the work. You go home safe. You do not get involved in rich people's business. Their drama is a quicksand that will swallow you whole. I was trying, Grandma. I was really trying. But then the old woman appeared. She materialized beside me like a specter. Tiny and ancient, her silver hair pulled back so severely, it seemed to stretch her papery skin across her skull. Diamonds glittered at her throat and ears and wrists. Her black dress probably cost more than a year of my rent. She looked at me with eyes like chips of ice. You there, she said. Her voice carried that particular authority of people who had never been told no. Not a question, a command. Miss. I stopped, lowered my eyes. Yes, ma'am. She pointed one gnarled finger toward the front of the cathedral, toward the altar, toward the casket surrounded by all those dying white roses. The flowers, she said, they are wilting. Go fix them. I blinked. Ma'am, I am serving drinks. I am not with the florist. I do not think I should be the one to. Now. The word cut through my protest like a knife. Her eyes never wavered. Go, fix them. Something in her tone made my stomach clench. This was not a request. This was not even really about the flowers. But I could not have explained why I knew that if someone had asked. I set my tray down on a nearby table. Yes, ma'am. I turned and began walking toward the front of the cathedral. The crowd seemed to part around me as I moved, or maybe they were just stepping away. Recoiling from the pregnant black waitress who was heading toward their fallen king like she had any right to be there. I felt their eyes on my back, heard the whispers starting up like wind through dead leaves. Who is that? What is she doing? Surely someone should stop her. But no one did. No one ever stopped the help from doing what they were told. We were invisible right up until the moment we became inconvenient. The casket grew larger as I approached. Gleaming mahogany wood, brass handles that caught the candlelight, flowers cascading down the sides in a waterfall of white and green. And there, at the front, the open lid revealing the deceased. The Ashfords believed in facing death directly. Some old family tradition I had heard a mourner mention earlier. They did not hide their dead behind closed caskets. They put them on display. One final performance for an audience that had watched them perform their whole lives. I had never seen a dead body before. My grandmother had been cremated, her service small and quiet in a funeral home that smelled like carpet cleaner and regret. I had not been able to afford anything else. Had not been able to afford much of anything, if I was being honest. The casket had stayed closed because there was no casket. Just an urn. Just ashes. Just the end of everything that had ever felt like home. My hands trembled as I reached for the wilting roses. I kept my eyes on the flowers. I did not want to look at him. Did not need to see the face of some dead billionaire who meant nothing to me, whose world I would never belong to, whose death would not change a single thing about my life. But my gaze drifted anyway, and everything changed. Julian Ashford was beautiful. The thought came before I could stop it, followed immediately by a wave of shame. What kind of person looked at a corpse and thought that? What kind of person noticed the sharp angle of cheekbones, the strong line of a jaw, the dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers and museum sculptures? He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my apartment. His hands were folded over his chest in peaceful repose, a gold signet ring glinting on his right hand. Even in death, he looked powerful, commanding, like a predator merely resting before the hunt. I forced my attention back to the flowers, pulled away the brown petals, adjusted the arrangements, tried to ignore the strange electricity crackling along my skin, the feeling that something was very, very wrong. That was when I saw it. His throat moved. It was so slight I thought I had imagined it. A flutter, a ripple beneath the pale skin where his pulse should be. There and gone in less than a heartbeat. I froze, my hand suspended in midair, a dead rose petal caught between my fingers. I stared at his throat, watched, waited. Nothing. No movement, no flutter. Nothing but still, pale skin and the distant sound of the organ playing something mournful and slow. Exhaustion, I told myself, 6 hours on my feet. Pregnancy hormones? The strange, heavy air of this cathedral playing tricks on my tired eyes. I was seeing things that were not there because my body was screaming for rest, and my mind was starting to fracture under the strain. I let out a shaky breath, turned back to the flowers, and then I saw it again. The faintest tremor beneath his skin, a movement so small it could have been a trick of the candlelight, could have been my imagination running wild, could have been anything except what it actually was. My eyes dropped to his chest. Rise. So subtle, so slight, like watching someone breathe in their sleep from across a dark room. Fall. My heart began to pound. Rise. No, this was not possible. Doctors had examined him. Medical professionals had confirmed his death. The obituary had run in the New York Times 3 days ago. His company's stock had plummeted. The whole world had mourned. Fall. But his chest was moving. Barely visible, barely there, but unmistakable. He was breathing. My hand flew to my mouth, stifling the gasp that wanted to tear itself from my throat. The rose petal I had been holding drifted down, landing on the casket's polished edge like a drop of blood on snow. This could not be real. This could not be happening. As a pregnant waitress from Queens who had not slept more than 4 hours a night in weeks, I was exhausted and overwhelmed and standing in a place I did not belong, and I was clearly, obviously, definitely losing my mind. But my grandmother's voice whispered in my memory, "Trust your gut, baby girl, even when your mind is telling you to stay quiet, especially then." I reached out. My fingers trembled as they moved toward his neck, toward the spot where his pulse should be, where his pulse could not possibly be, because he was dead, certified dead, 3 days in a casket dead. The moment my fingertips touched his skin, I knew. He was warm. Not cold, not waxy, not lifeless, warm like sun-heated stone, like a living, breathing human being. I pressed harder, searching for the artery, searching for proof that I was wrong, that I was crazy, that I was about to embarrass myself in front of 500 of New York's most powerful people by screaming about a dead man's pulse. And there it was. Slow, so slow it was almost imperceptible. A beat, then nothing, then another beat, like a heart trying to remember how to work. Like a body fighting its way back from somewhere very, very far away. He was alive. Julian Ashford was alive. The cathedral seemed to spin around me. The organ music warped and stretched. The candlelight flickered like flames in a hurricane. Everything I thought I knew about the world, about death, about the fundamental nature of reality, came crashing down around me like a house made of cards. Someone had declared this man dead. Someone had put him in this casket. Someone was about to bury him in the ground while his heart was still beating, while his lungs were still pulling in air, while his brain was still firing and his blood was still flowing, and his life was still clinging to his body with desperate, invisible fingers. I should have walked away. I should have convinced myself I was wrong. Should have decided that exhaustion and pregnancy and the overwhelming strangeness of this day had finally broken something in my brain. Should have remembered that I was nobody. A pregnant black waitress who had no business disrupting this sacred ritual, this gathering of the powerful and the privileged, this funeral for a king I had never met and would never understand. I should have kept my head down, done the work, gone home safe. But I could not. Because under my fingertips, Julian Ashford's pulse was getting stronger. And if I walked away now, if I let them close that casket and lower it into the ground, I would be complicit in his murder. He is not dead. The words came out as a whisper, so quiet they disappeared into the organ music, lost in the rustle of expensive fabric and the murmur of performative grief. No one heard me. The priest was preparing to begin his eulogy. The mourners were settling into their pews. The casket was surrounded by flowers and candles and all the elaborate trappings of a death that had not actually happened. He is not dead. Louder this time. Loud enough that the woman closest to me turned her head, frowned, looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that had suddenly started speaking. "Excuse me," she said. "Did you say something?" I pulled my hand away from Julian's neck, stared at her with wild eyes. He is not dead. I can feel his pulse. He is alive. Her frown deepened into something between confusion and disgust. "Young lady, I think you need to step away from the casket." The grief can be overwhelming, even for those of us who did not know him personally. "You do not understand." My voice was rising now, cracking at the edges. "He is breathing, his heart is beating. Someone needs to call a doctor, someone needs to." "Security." The woman's voice cut through my words like a blade. She gestured sharply toward the back of the cathedral. "Someone, please remove this woman. She is hysterical." No, please, you have to listen to me." I grabbed her arm, desperate. "I know how this sounds. I know you think I am crazy." But I felt his pulse. I felt it. He is alive. You cannot bury him alive. You cannot. Hands grabbed my shoulders from behind. Multiple hands. Strong hands. Pulling me away from the casket. Away from the woman. Away from the one person in this entire cathedral who actually needed help. I fought them. I do not know where the strength came from. Maybe it was the adrenaline flooding my system. Maybe it was the baby, my daughter, giving me everything she had. Maybe it was my grandmother's voice in my head, telling me that sometimes you have to make noise, sometimes you have to cause a scene, sometimes being quiet is the same as being complicit. Let go of me. I was screaming now, my voice echoing off the stone walls, shattering the careful silence of the ceremony. "He is not dead. Check his pulse. Somebody check his pulse. He is not dead." The cathedral erupted into chaos. Women gasped. Men shouted. The organ music stumbled and died. 500 faces turned to stare at me. At the pregnant black waitress being restrained by security guards. At the crazy woman who had disrupted their sacred funeral with her hysterical screaming. I saw judgment in their eyes, saw contempt, saw exactly what they thought of me. Another unstable minority who could not handle being in civilized company. Another problem to be removed, to be forgotten, to be erased from the narrative of this important day. But I did not stop fighting, did not stop screaming. "He is alive. Please, please someone just check. I am not crazy. I am not hysterical. His heart is beating. His chest is moving. He is alive. He is alive. He is..." And then, Julian Ashford's eyes snapped open. The scream that tore through the cathedral was not mine. It came from everywhere at once. From the elderly women in the front pews who stumbled backward, their faces white with terror. From the men who reached for their wives, their phones, their hearts. From somewhere deep in the collective unconscious of 500 people who had just watched a dead man open his eyes, Julian sat up in his casket. The movement was slow, labored, like a man dragging himself up from the bottom of a very deep well. His chest heaved. His hands gripped the sides of the casket, knuckles white against the polished wood. His head turned, scanning the chaos around him with eyes that were unfocused, confused, still half lost in whatever darkness he had been swimming through. And then those eyes found mine. Gray, the color of storm clouds and steel in winter oceans. Sharp and piercing even through the fog of whatever had been done to him. They locked onto me with an intensity that made every nerve in my body catch fire. The security guards had frozen, their hands still on my arms, but their grips slack with shock. The whole cathedral had frozen. 500 people turned to statues by the impossible sight before them. Julian Ashford, dead for 3 days. Sitting up in his own casket. He opened his mouth, closed it, swallowed hard. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough, ravaged, like sandpaper dragged across broken glass. Who? He stopped, coughed, tried again. Who are you? He was looking at me, only at me, like I was the only real thing in a room full of ghosts. My voice came out as a croak. I am. My name is Zara Mitchell. I am the one who. I am the one who felt your pulse. I am the one who screamed. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, maybe, or confusion. Or the beginning of an understanding that would take both of us somewhere we never expected to go. Then a woman's voice shattered the moment. Get away from him. I turned. Saw her pushing through the crowd. Tall, elegant, early 40s, with ice blonde hair and a face that had been surgically preserved into a mask of eternal youth. Her black dress cost more than everything I owned combined. Her eyes were cold and hard and fixed on me with undisguised hatred. Victoria Ashford, the widow, the wife of the man who was apparently not dead. She reached the casket and immediately positioned herself between me and Julian. Her hand reached for his face, his shoulder, his chest, checking, touching, claiming. Julian, darling, her voice was honey poured over broken glass. You are alive. Oh my God, you are alive. What happened? How is this possible? But she was not looking at him when she said it. She was looking at me, and in her eyes I saw something that made my blood run cold. She was not surprised. Shocked, yes. Terrified, definitely, but not surprised. Not the way you would be if your dead husband suddenly sat up in his coffin. She looked like a chess player watching her opponent make an unexpected move. Calculating, adjusting, already planning her next strategy. Someone call a doctor. Her voice carried across the cathedral, authoritative and commanding. Now. And someone remove this woman. She gestured at me without looking. She clearly caused some kind of disturbance. No. Julian's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. One word, barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute command. She stays. Victoria's composure cracked. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the fury blazing beneath the surface. Julian, you have been through a trauma. You are confused. This woman is nobody. She is just the hired help. She. Julian's eyes moved slowly from his wife to me and back again. She is the only person in this room who noticed I was still alive. He pushed himself up further, swung his legs over the side of the casket, tried to stand and almost fell, catching himself on the edge with hands that trembled violently. I moved without thinking, slipped past Victoria, took his arm, helped him steady himself. His skin was still warm, his pulse beat strong against my fingertips. His eyes found mine again, and in them I saw something that looked almost like gratitude. Thank you, he said quietly. Then, louder, to the room at large, everyone out. Dominic. A massive man in a black suit materialized at his side, gray-streaked hair, face like carved granite, eyes that missed nothing. Sir, the man said. His voice was surprisingly soft for someone his size. Clear the room, get names. No one leaves the city until I understand what happened here. Julian's gaze swept across the assembled mourners, landing on his wife with particular weight. No one. Victoria's mask slipped again. Julian, this is not necessary. You have just had a traumatic experience. You need rest, not an investigation. I am your wife. Let me help you. Julian looked at her for a long moment. Something passed between them. Something dark and complicated and invisible to everyone else in the room. Then he said 5 words that changed everything. You stay too, Victoria. The way he said her name, not like a husband speaking to his wife, like a prosecutor naming a suspect. She went pale, opened her mouth, closed it, and for just a second I saw real fear flash across her carefully preserved face. The cathedral began to empty. Dominic and his team herded the mourners toward the exits, taking names, checking identification, ignoring protests from people who were clearly not used to being told what to do. Through it all, Julian kept hold of my arm. His grip was not tight enough to hurt, but it was firm enough that I could not have pulled away if I tried. Not that I was trying, I was too shocked to try anything, too overwhelmed by the insanity of what had just happened, by the realization that I had somehow stumbled into the middle of something much bigger and much darker than a simple funeral. I needed to leave. Needed to get back to my apartment, my life, my carefully constructed survival system. Needed to forget this day had ever happened and go back to being invisible. But Julian Ashford was holding my arm, looking at me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had suddenly turned to quicksand, and his wife was staring at me like she wanted to see me erased from existence. I was not going anywhere. The cathedral was nearly empty now. Just me, Julian, Victoria, Dominic, and a handful of security guards stationed at the doors like sentinels. Julian finally let go of my arm, took a step, swayed dangerously. I caught him, guided him down to sit on the edge of the altar steps. He was shaking, fine tremors running through his entire body. Whatever had been done to him, he was still feeling the effects. "Sir," Dominic said, approaching, "I have a doctor on the way. Dr. Chen, he can be trusted." Julian nodded weakly. His eyes had not left mine. "You, Zara Mitchell, how did you know?" I did not know. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. Distant. Hollow. I saw your throat move. Your chest. I thought I was imagining it, but I could not. I could not just walk away. Not if there was even a chance. Why? The question was simple, but his eyes demanded more. Why did you care? You do not know me. You do not know anything about me. You must have heard stories. You know what I am. I knew what he meant. The Ashford family was not just wealthy. They were powerful in ways that did not make the newspapers. Whispers of political influence, of business dealings that skirted the edge of legal, of a dynasty built on secrets and silence and the kind of money that made problems disappear. I looked at this man, this billionaire in his expensive suit, sitting on the steps of a cathedral where moments ago he had been lying in a casket meant to become his tomb. And I told him the truth. Everyone deserves to breathe. My voice was steady, surprising myself. No one deserves to be buried alive, not even a billionaire. Something shifted in his face. Surprise, then something softer, something that looked almost like wonder. Before he could respond, the doors at the back of the cathedral opened. An elderly Asian man hurried in, medical bag in hand. Behind him came two more people in scrubs, pushing a stretcher. Dr. Chen reached us in seconds. He took one look at Julian, and his professional composure cracked. "My God," he breathed. They said you were." His hands moved quickly, efficiently, even as his voice shook. He pressed a stethoscope to Julian's chest. Checked his pupils, drew blood with practiced precision. His face grew more alarmed with each test. "What is it?" Julian demanded. "What was done to me?" Dr. Chen looked up, met Julian's eyes, then glanced at me. Then at Victoria, who had stayed frozen near the casket this entire time, watching everything with those cold, calculating eyes. "I need to run more tests," the doctor said carefully, "but based on the preliminary examination and the Bannon circumstances, I believe you were poisoned with tetrodotoxin." The word hung in the air like smoke. "Tetrodotoxin," Julian repeated flatly. "Pufferfish poison." Dr. Chen's voice was grim. "In precise doses, it can mimic death almost perfectly. Slows the heart rate to nearly undetectable levels, suppresses breathing to the point of apparent cessation, makes the victim appear dead to all but the most thorough examination." My stomach lurched. "Someone poisoned you," I whispered, before I could stop myself. "Made you look dead on purpose." Julian's jaw tightened. The dose. How precise would it need to be? "Very." Dr. Chen wiped sweat from his forehead. "Too much and you would have actually died. Too little and the effects would have worn off too quickly. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. They calculated how long you would be. They planned it precisely." "Planned it for what?" I asked. Then immediately wished I had not. But Julian answered anyway. His voice was flat, cold. "Planned it so I would wake up after the funeral was over. After the casket was sealed. After I was 6 feet underground with no way out." The cathedral seemed to grow colder. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly aware of how thin my uniform was. How exposed I felt. Someone had tried to bury this man alive. had poisoned him with surgical precision, fooled doctors and medical examiners, orchestrated an elaborate funeral, all so that he would wake up in the dark, in a box, with the weight of the earth pressing down on him. It was monstrous, unthinkable, the kind of cruelty that belonged in horror movies, not in real life, not in a cathedral on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And I had stopped it, accidentally, impossibly. I had stopped it simply by noticing what everyone else had missed. "Dr. Chen," Julian said quietly, "I need you to test everything I consumed in the last week. Every meal, every drink, every medication. I want to know exactly how this was administered and by whom." The doctor nodded. "I will need access to your home, your kitchens. You will have full access. Dominic will coordinate." Julian's eyes moved to his wife, Victoria. She flinched, actually flinched. A tiny movement, barely visible, but I caught it. "Yes, darling." Her voice was steady, but something underneath it was not. "Anything you need. I am just so relieved you are alive when I think of what could have happened." She pressed a hand to her chest. "It does not bear thinking about." "No." Julian's voice was ice. "It does not." They stared at each other, husband and wife, survivor and something else. Something I could not quite name but could feel crackling in the air between them like electricity before a storm. Then Julian looked at me. "Miss Mitchell," he said, "I need you to stay." My heart stuttered. "What? No, I cannot. I have to. I have work tomorrow. I have responsibilities. I have a life that does not involve." I gestured helplessly at the cathedral, at the casket, at the entire impossible situation I had somehow stumbled into. "You have a life that someone tried to end," he said quietly. "You stopped my funeral. You ruined someone's plan. Whoever did this will see you as a threat now, a loose end." The words hit me like ice water. "I am nobody," I whispered. "I am just a waitress. I do not have anything to do with your world. I just noticed. That is all. That is everything." His gray eyes held mine. "You notice what trained doctors missed, what my own family missed, what everyone in this room was either too blind or too complicit to see." His hand reached out, caught mine. His grip was warm now, steady, nothing like the trembling man who had almost collapsed a few minutes ago. "Until I know who did this and why," he said, "you are the only person I can trust, because you are the only person who saved my life instead of standing by while someone tried to take it." Behind him, Victoria's face contorted, just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the rage burning beneath the surface. "Julian," she said smoothly, "you cannot possibly expect this woman to stay here, to be involved in family matters. She is not one of us. She does not belong in our world. Surely you can see that." Julian did not look at her, did not even acknowledge she had spoken. He just kept looking at me, waiting for my answer. And I knew in that moment that my life had just split into two paths. I could walk away, leave this cathedral and never look back, go home to my apartment and my debt and my 3 jobs and my baby on the way, pretend this day had never happened. Or I could stay with a man who had just risen from the dead, stay in a world of money and power and secrets, stay in the crosshairs of whoever had tried to commit the most elaborate murder I had ever heard of. I thought about my grandmother, about all the times she had told me to keep my head down, stay out of trouble, survive. Then I thought about her funeral, about how I had stood there alone with no one to hold my hand, no one to notice if I was breathing, no one to scream for me if I stopped. "Okay," I heard myself say, "I will stay." Julian's grip on my hand tightened. And somewhere behind us, Victoria Ashford made a sound like a wounded animal trying very hard to stay silent. What was done to Julian Ashford was not a random act of violence. It was a plan 3 years in the making, orchestrated by someone closer to him than he ever imagined. And Zara Mitchell, the pregnant waitress who saved his life, is about to discover that her involvement was not as accidental as she believed. The Ashford estate rose out of the darkness like something from a fever dream. I pressed my face against the window of the black SUV, watching iron gates swing open to reveal a world I had only seen in magazines. Manicured gardens stretched toward the horizon, their edges blurred by the evening mist. Fountains caught the moonlight, Water cascading down marble statues that probably cost more than every apartment in my building combined. The main house, if you could call something that massive a house, sprawled across the landscape like a sleeping giant. All stone and glass and old money and older secrets. "This is not real," I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "This cannot be real." Beside me, Julian shifted. He had been silent for most of the drive, his face turned toward his own window, his breathing slow and measured. The doctor had wanted him to go to the hospital, but Julian had refused. Too public, he had said. Too many questions. Too many opportunities for whoever did this to finish the job. So instead, we were here, at his home, the place where someone had almost certainly poisoned him. "It is real," Julian said quietly. His voice was still rough, still recovering from whatever the tetrodotoxin had done to his system. But there was strength underneath the damage now, a steel core that I was beginning to recognize. And I know how overwhelming it must seem, but you need to understand something, Zara. He turned to look at me. In the dim light of the car, his gray eyes were almost black. "This is not a world you can dip your toes into. You are either in or you are out. There is no middle ground. No safe distance. The moment you stopped my funeral, you became part of this, whether you wanted to or not." I swallowed hard. My hand moved instinctively to my belly, to the baby growing inside me, the baby I had promised to protect, the baby I had sworn would have a better life than mine. "I did not ask for this," I said. "No," his voice softened. "You did not, and I am sorry for that, but I am not sorry you were there. I am not sorry you saw what no one else saw. Because if you had not been there, Zara—" He stopped, swallowed. "If you had not been there, I would be waking up right now in a sealed coffin, choking on recycled air, clawing at a lid that would not open, screaming for help that would never come." The image hit me like a physical blow. I had been trying not to think about it, trying not to picture what would have happened if I had ignored that flutter in his throat, if I had convinced myself I was imagining things, if I had kept my head down and done my job and gone home safe. He would have died, slowly, horribly, alone in the dark. And someone in his life had planned it that way. The car pulled to a stop in front of the main entrance. Dominic was already there, opening Julian's door, offering a steady hand to help him out. More security personnel flanked the entrance, their eyes scanning the darkness, their hands never far from their weapons. I climbed out of the car on shaking legs. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of cut grass and night-blooming flowers, and something else underneath, something that smelled like danger. The front doors opened before we reached them. A woman stood silhouetted in the light, her posture rigid, her face unreadable. She was younger than Victoria, maybe mid-30s, elegant in the effortless way of people who had never known anything else. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her eyes, the same gray as Julian's, swept over me with barely concealed suspicion. "Julian." Her voice was clipped, controlled. "We received word that you were, that you had." She stopped, composed herself. I did not believe it until Dominic called. "Sujin." Julian's voice warmed slightly. "It is good to see you too." Sujin, the sister. I remembered whispers about her from the funeral. Educated at Cambridge. Ran the family's charitable foundation. Stayed out of the spotlight, but wielded significant influence behind the scenes. The quiet power behind the Ashford throne. She stepped forward and embraced her brother. The gesture was brief but fierce, her arms tightening around him like she was afraid he might disappear again. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. "I thought I had lost you," she said quietly, when they told me, when Victoria called and said. Her jaw tightened. "I should have known something was wrong. I should have felt it." "You could not have known," Julian squeezed her shoulder. "No one knew. Except—" He turned, looked at me, her. Sujin's gaze followed his, landed on me, took in my cheap uniform, my swollen belly, my exhausted face. Her expression did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes. "The waitress," she said. "Not a question," Dominic told me. "She saw what the doctors missed." She did more than see. Julian's hand found the small of my back. A gesture so casual, so natural, that it took me a moment to register the intimacy of it. She screamed the truth when everyone else was ready to bury me alive. She fought security guards twice her size. She saved my life. Sujin studied me for a long moment. I could not read what she was thinking. Could not tell if she saw me as an ally, or a threat, or simply an inconvenience to be dealt with. Then she did something I did not expect. She bowed her head. Just slightly. Just enough. Thank you, she said. The words were formal, but the emotion underneath them was real. I do not know who you are or why you are there, but thank you for giving me my brother back. I did not know what to say. Did not know the protocol for accepting gratitude from billionaires in the foyer of their ancestral home while their brother's hand burned against the base of my spine. I could not let him. I stumbled over the words. It was the right thing to do. Sujin's expression flickered. Something that might have been respect crossed her features. The right thing, she repeated softly. How rare, how dangerous. She looked at Julian. She needs to be protected. I know. She needs to understand what she has walked into. I know. And Victoria, Sujin's voice hardened. Where is Victoria? Being questioned by Dominic's team, Julian's jaw tightened, along with everyone else who was at the funeral. Everyone who had access to my food, my medication, my schedule. Everyone who could have done this. You think Victoria is involved? The question hung in the air between them. Heavy, poisonous. Julian did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice was carefully neutral. I think someone I trusted tried to kill me. I think that person is still in my life. And I think until I know who it is, everyone is a suspect. He paused. Including my wife. Sujin nodded slowly. Then we need to be careful. Victoria has allies, powerful ones. If you move against her without proof, I am not moving against anyone. Not yet. Julian's hand pressed more firmly against my back. First, I need to understand what happened, how it happened, and why. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing past the uniform and the exhaustion and the fear to something underneath. And I need to keep Zara safe, because if whoever did this sees her as a threat, she will not survive the week. The words should have terrified me, should have sent me running for the door, begging for a ride back to Queens, back to my apartment and my life and my carefully constructed illusion of safety. But I did not run. I stayed. And somewhere deep inside me, in a place I did not want to examine too closely, I knew that I was not just staying because I was afraid of what would happen if I left. I was staying because of the way Julian Ashford looked at me, like I mattered, like I was visible, like I was something more than a ghost moving through other people's lives. I had been invisible for so long, and suddenly, terrifyingly, wonderfully, someone could see me. The guest suite they put me in was larger than my entire apartment. I stood in the center of the room, turning in slow circles, trying to process the sheer absurdity of my situation. A 4-poster bed that could have slept 6 people, windows that overlooked gardens I could have gotten lost in, a bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool, a closet already stocked with clothes that somehow fit perfectly, that I had not asked for and could never afford. On the nightstand, someone had placed a small vase of fresh flowers, not roses, lilies, purple and white and smelling faintly of honey. There was a knock at the door. I jumped, pressed my hand against my racing heart, took a breath. Come in. The door opened. A young woman in a crisp uniform entered, carrying a tray. Mr. Ashford thought you might be hungry, she said. Her voice was professional, her eyes carefully avoiding mine. He asked me to bring you something to eat, and to let you know that he will check on you in the morning. You should rest. She set the tray on a small table near the window. I caught a glimpse of what was on it. Soup, fresh bread, fruit, a glass of what looked like freshly squeezed juice. My stomach growled. I had not eaten since breakfast, had not even thought about food since this nightmare began. Thank you, I said. Thank you. The woman nodded, started to leave, then stopped at the door. Miss Mitchell. Yes. She turned. Her professional mask slipped, just for a moment. Thank you, she said quietly, for what you did, for Mr. Ashford. He is, she hesitated, he is not like the others. He actually sees us, the staff, I mean. He remembers our names, asks about our families. He is a good man, underneath everything. I did not know what to say. Did not know how to reconcile the image of a kind, caring employer with the world I had glimpsed tonight. A world of poison and betrayal and attempted murder. He is lucky to have people who care about him, I finally said. The woman's mouth curved in a sad smile. Not as many as he thinks. Good night, Miss Mitchell. Sleep well. She left. The door clicked shut behind her. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the food I was too exhausted to eat, the bed I was too wired to sleep in, the window that looked out over a world I did not belong in. Then I walked to the bathroom, turned on the water, and let myself cry. I did not know how long I stayed in the tub, long enough for the water to go cold, long enough for my tears to run dry, long enough for the baby to kick against my ribs 3 times, like she was checking on me. I am okay, I told her, pressing my hand against the movement. We are okay. We are going to figure this out. Somehow. I did not believe it. But saying the words out loud made them feel slightly less like lies. When I finally dragged myself out of the bath, wrapped myself in a robe that was softer than anything I had ever owned, and collapsed into the impossibly comfortable bed, I expected to lie awake for hours. Expected my mind to race with questions and fears and the overwhelming weight of everything that had happened. Instead, I was asleep within seconds, pulled under by an exhaustion so complete it felt like drowning. I dreamed of coffins, of roses wilting, of gray eyes opening in the dark, and somewhere in the dream a voice whispered my name. Zara, Zara, Zara. Like a promise, like a warning, like both. I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I did not recognize. For a moment, I did not know where I was. The bed was too soft. The sheets were too smooth. The air smelled like lavender and money, not like the damp and mildew of my queen's apartment. Then it all came rushing back. The funeral, the casket, the pulse beneath my fingertips, Julian Ashford's eyes snapping open, the chaos, the accusations, the car ride through the darkness to this impossible place. I sat up slowly. My body ached in ways I had not noticed last night. Muscles, protesting the hours of standing, the struggle with security guards, the sheer physical toll of the most traumatic day of my life. The baby kicked. Hard. I know, I murmured, pressing my hand against her. I know, we need food. I swung my legs out of bed and froze. Someone had been in the room while I slept. The clothes I had been wearing last night, the cheap uniform that marked me as help, were gone. In their place, draped carefully over a chair, was a simple but clearly expensive dress. Navy blue. Soft fabric. My size somehow. Beside the chair was a pair of flats. Also my size. On the desk was a tray with breakfast. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, orange juice, still warm. Someone had come in, removed my clothes, brought new ones, delivered food, all while I slept, all without waking me. The realization should have frightened me, should have made me feel vulnerable, exposed, watched. Instead, I felt something else, something I could not name. Cared for, maybe, looked after. Like someone was paying attention to what I needed before I even knew I needed it. It was such a foreign feeling that I did not know what to do with it. I got dressed, ate the food, tried to make sense of my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me did not seem like Zara Mitchell, pregnant waitress from Queens. She looked like someone else, someone who might actually belong in a place like this. The thought was terrifying. A knock at the door made me jump. Miss Mitchell, Dominic's voice muffled through the wood. Mr. Ashford would like to see you when you are ready. I took a breath, smoothed down the dress that fit like it had been made for me, pressed my hand against my belly one more time. Then I opened the door. Julian was in his study. I did not know what I had expected. A hospital bed, maybe. Medical equipment. Nurses monitoring his vitals. He had been dead yesterday. Or as close to dead as a person could get without actually dying. Instead, I found him sitting behind a massive desk, dressed in casual clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, looking through a stack of papers. He looked tired, pale, but alive, impossibly, undeniably alive. He looked up when I entered, and something in his face shifted. Zara. He stood, came around the desk, moved toward me like I was a magnet he could not resist. You look. He stopped, swallowed. You look rested. I slept well, I said. The words felt inadequate. I did not know what you were supposed to say to a man who had been in a coffin 24 hours ago, considering you witnessed my resurrection and nearly got arrested for it. Something like that. He gestured to a chair. Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss. I sat. He did not go back behind his desk. Instead, he took the chair beside mine, close enough that I could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the armrests, like he was holding himself together through sheer force of will. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Julian said, Dominic found something. My heart stuttered. What? The catering company you worked for. Colette's Catering. He looked at me. It does not exist. Never did. The words did not make sense. That is impossible. I have been working for them for 2 years. I have pay stubs. I have a supervisor. I have... A shell company, Julian interrupted gently, created 3 years ago. Used to place temporary workers at various high-profile events. Legitimate on the surface. But when Dominic tried to trace the ownership, he found nothing. No real names. No real addresses. Just layers of holding companies and dead ends. I felt the blood drain from my face. I do not understand. What does that mean? Who have I been working for? That is what I am trying to figure out. Julian leaned forward. You were placed at my funeral, Zara, specifically positioned near my casket, given a task that required you to approach the body. Someone wanted you there. Someone wanted me to find you, I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Someone knew you were alive. Someone wanted me to see. Or someone wanted you to be blamed. Julian's voice was careful. If you had not noticed I was breathing, if you had simply adjusted the flowers and walked away, what would have happened? You would have been buried alive. And if someone had noticed later, if an autopsy had been performed and the truth had come out, who would the investigation have focused on? The catering staff. My voice came out strangled. The person who was closest to the body, the person who had the opportunity to administer the poison, or to be framed for it. Julian's jaw tightened. You were either meant to save me or take the fall for my murder. Either way, someone put you in that room for a reason. The room was spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair, trying to anchor myself. I do not know anything, I said. I swear to you, I did not know who you were. I did not know about any poison. I was just trying to make money to pay off my grandmother's medical debt. I was just trying to survive. I believe you. The words were so simple, so unexpected. I looked up and found Julian watching me with something I could not name. Why? I asked. Why do you believe me? You do not know me. You do not know anything about me. I could be lying. I could be part of. Because I have spent my entire life surrounded by liars. Julian's voice was quiet but fierce. I know what deception looks like. I know how it sounds. I know the way people's eyes shift when they are hiding something. And when I look at you, Zara Mitchell, I do not see any of that. I see fear. I see confusion. I see a woman who stumbled into something she does not understand and is trying desperately to make sense of it. He paused. I see someone like me. Someone like you. Someone who has been invisible their whole life. Someone who has watched from the margins while other people made decisions that affected them. Someone who has never had the power to control their own story. I stared at him. This man worth billions. This man whose face had been on magazine covers and business journals and society pages for as long as I could remember. You are not invisible, I said. Something flickered in his eyes. Sadness, recognition, something deeper. There are different kinds of invisible, he said quietly. You can be seen by everyone and still feel like no one really looks at you. You can be surrounded by people and still be completely alone. He leaned back in his chair. My whole life, I have been Julian Ashford, the heir, the CEO, the face of a dynasty. But Julian, the person, Julian who has fears and hopes and dreams that have nothing to do with money, that man has been invisible for as long as I can remember. His words hit me somewhere deep, somewhere I had been protecting for years. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I want you to understand something. He held my gaze. I am not keeping you here because I need a witness. I am not keeping you here because I feel obligated to protect the woman who saved my life. He paused. I am keeping you here because you are the first person in years who has made me feel like I actually exist. The silence that followed was deafening. I did not know what to say, did not know how to respond to a confession that felt too big, too raw, too real for the situation we were in. Before I could find words, there was a sharp knock at the door. Julian's expression shuddered. The vulnerability disappeared behind a mask of cool control. Come in. Dominic entered. His face was grim. Sir, we have a development. What is it? Dominic glanced at me, hesitated. She stays, Julian said flatly. Whatever it is, she can hear it. Dominic nodded slowly. We finished questioning Victoria, and we found something in her financial records, something she cannot explain. What kind of something? Large payments. Starting 3 years ago, to an untraceable account. Dominic's voice was heavy. The same account that funded the shell company, the one that hired Miss Mitchell. The room went very still. Julian did not move, did not blink, but something in the air around him changed, grew colder, harder. Where is my wife now? He asked quietly. Still being held in the East Wing. She is demanding to see you. Her lawyers have been calling. She says this is a misunderstanding. She says, I do not care what she says. Julian stood. His movements were precise, controlled. But underneath the control, I could see something dangerous building. I want her held until I have reviewed the evidence myself. I want her communications monitored. I want to know everyone she has spoken to in the past 3 years. Sir, there is something else. Dominic's voice dropped. We found communications between Victoria and your brother, Marcus. The name landed like a bomb. Julian went very still. What kind of communications? Intimate ones. Dominic did not flinch from Julian's gaze. They have been having an affair for at least 3 years. And based on what we found, sir, they have been planning something for almost as long. Planning what? Dominic looked at me again, then back at Julian. To kill you, to make it look like natural causes, to inherit your estate and take control of the company. His voice was heavy. Victoria was never supposed to be your widow for long. She and Marcus were planning to be married within the year. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Julian stood there for a long moment, not moving, not speaking, just processing. Then he laughed. It was not a happy sound. It was bitter and broken and hollow. Of course, he said quietly. Of course it was them. The 2 people I trusted most. The 2 people I let into my life. Into my bed. Into my heart. He turned, walked to the window, stared out at the gardens, with his hands clasped behind his back. Julian, I said softly. He did not turn around. Do you know what the worst part is? He asked. His voice was eerily calm. The worst part is not that they wanted me dead. The worst part is that I am not even surprised. I always knew, somewhere deep down, that Victoria did not love me, that she loved the name, the money, the power. I married her anyway, because that is what Ashfords do. We marry for alliance, for position, for everything except love. That is not a life, I said before I could stop myself. That is a prison. He turned then, looked at me with those gray eyes that had seen too much and felt too little for far too long. Yes, he said, it is. Another knock at the door, more urgent this time. Dominic opened it without waiting for permission. Another security officer was there, breathless. Sir, there is a problem. Victoria. She what? The officer swallowed. She escaped. 20 minutes ago. We do not know how. We do not know where she went. The words hung in the air. Julian's expression did not change, but his voice, when he spoke, was cold enough to freeze. Find her. Sir, we have teams searching, but she had help. Someone on the inside. We found evidence that she was communicating with. With whom? The officer hesitated, then said a name that made Julian's face go white. Marcus. Your brother, sir. He never left the country. He has been hiding here, in the city, waiting. Waiting for what? The officer looked at me, then back at Julian. For her to finish what they started. The next 72 hours were a blur of chaos and discovery. Dominic's team tore through every aspect of Victoria and Marcus's conspiracy: the financial records, the communications, the careful planning that had gone into trying to murder Julian and make it look like natural causes. I stayed in my room mostly, watching the chaos unfold from a distance. Staff members scurried past my door at all hours. Security was tripled. Everyone was a suspect until proven otherwise. And Julian. Julian became something I barely recognized. The gentle man who had confided in me about feeling invisible disappeared. In his place was someone cold, calculating, ruthless. A man who had built an empire and would not let anyone take it from him. I saw glimpses of him sometimes, striding through the hallways with Dominic at his side, barking orders into phones, reviewing documents with lawyers and accountants, and people whose titles I did not understand. He did not come to see me. I told myself it was fine. He was dealing with a crisis. He was hunting the people who had tried to kill him. He did not have time for a pregnant waitress who had stumbled into his life by accident. But at night, when the estate grew quiet and I lay in that impossibly soft bed with my hand on my belly, I found myself thinking about the way he had looked at me in his study. "You are the first person in years who has made me feel like I actually exist." On the third night, there was a knock at my door. It was after midnight. I had been staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep, replaying every moment of the past few days in my mind. I got up, padded to the door, opened it. Julian stood there. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, still dressed in the same clothes he had been wearing that morning. But when he saw me, something in his face softened. "I apologize," he said quietly, "for staying away, for making you feel abandoned in the middle of all this." "You have been busy," I said. "You have more important things to worry about than—" "No," the word was firm. "There is nothing more important than making sure you are safe. Making sure you know that you are not alone here. I have been handling this badly, and I am sorry." I did not know what to say. No one had ever apologized to me for being busy before. No one had ever put my feelings alongside their crisis and decided mine mattered too. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped back, let him enter. He walked to the window, stood there for a moment looking out at the moonlit gardens. "We found them," he said finally. "Victoria and Marcus." "Yes. They were hiding in a property Marcus owns upstate. Dominic's team caught them 3 hours ago." I sank onto the edge of the bed. My legs would not hold me. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now they face justice." Julian's voice was hard. "They will be charged with conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, a dozen other things. They will spend the rest of their lives paying for what they tried to do. And you." He turned, looked at me. "Me," he repeated. "What happens to you now?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room, sat beside me on the bed, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "I do not know," he admitted. "For the first time in my life, I do not have a plan. I do not have a strategy. I just have." He paused. "Questions." "What kind of questions?" "Questions about what I want my life to look like. Questions about who I want to be now that I have been given a second chance. Questions about whether it is possible to build something real out of the ashes of something false." He looked at me then, really looked at me. "Questions about you," he said softly. My heart stuttered. "What about me?" "Why you were there. Why you noticed what no one else noticed. Why you cared enough to scream the truth when it would have been so much easier to stay quiet." I did not have an answer for him. Did not have words for the impulse that had driven me to press my fingers against the dead man's throat and refuse to believe what my eyes were telling me. "I could not let you die," I whispered. "I could not walk away knowing you were still alive. It would have haunted me forever. Even though you did not know me. Even though saving me put you in danger. Even though it cost you everything, your job, your safety, your anonymity." I swallowed hard. "Even though." Julian reached out. Slowly, carefully, like he was afraid I might break. His hand cupped my face. His thumb traced the line of my cheekbone. "You are remarkable," he said quietly. "Do you know that? You are the most remarkable person I have ever met." "I am not remarkable." My voice shook. I am just a waitress who got lucky." "No." His eyes held mine. "You are a woman who saw a stranger in danger and chose to act. Who risked everything for someone she did not know. Who has more courage and compassion in her smallest finger than most people have in their entire bodies." Julian. I did not know what else to say. Did not know how to process the intensity of his gaze, the warmth of his hand, the way my heart was racing like it was trying to escape my chest. "I know this is fast," he said. "I know we barely know each other. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is complicated and difficult and probably impossible." He leaned closer, his forehead pressed against mine. "But I cannot stop thinking about you," he whispered. "Since the moment I opened my eyes and saw your face, you are all I think about. When I am in meetings, I wonder what you are doing. When I am reviewing evidence, I wonder if you are okay. When I close my eyes at night, I see you, standing over my casket, fighting security guards, screaming the truth. I could not breathe. Tell me to stop," he said. "Tell me this is wrong. Tell me you do not feel it too, and I will walk out of this room and never speak of it again." I should have told him to stop. I should have reminded him that I was pregnant with another man's child, that I was from a different world, that whatever connection we felt was born out of trauma and crisis and would not survive the return to normal life. I should have protected myself, protected my baby, protected my heart. Instead, I said, "I feel it too." And Julian Ashford kissed me. It was not like any kiss I had ever experienced. It was not hungry or desperate or rushed. It was slow, deliberate, a question asked with infinite patience. His lips were soft, his hands were gentle. He held me like I was something precious, something worth protecting. I had never been kissed like that before, had never been touched like I mattered. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine again. "Stay," he whispered, "not because I need you. Not because you owe me anything. Stay because you want to. Stay because there is something here, something real, something worth exploring." I should have said no. I said yes. The next 6 weeks changed everything. Julian and I built something in the ruins of his old life. Something fragile and new and terrifyingly real. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. About his childhood in boarding schools, and mine in my grandmother's tiny apartment. About his dreams of a different life, and mine of a better future for my daughter. About the fears we had never spoken aloud, and the hopes we had been too afraid to acknowledge. He came to my prenatal appointments, sat beside me in waiting rooms filled with couples who stared at us with confusion and curiosity, held my hand while the doctor measured my belly and checked my baby's heartbeat. He is good with the ultrasound images, studies them like they are business reports, traces the curve of the baby's spine with his finger. "She is perfect," he said one afternoon, looking at the latest scan. "Absolutely perfect." "She is not yours," I reminded him gently. "She is. She does not have anything to do with you." He looked at me then, something fierce in his eyes. "She could be," he said quietly, "if you let her." The words hit me like a wave. What? I know it is soon. I know we are still figuring out what we are. But I want you to know, Zara, Julian took my hands in his. Whatever happens between us, I want to be part of her life. I want to be the father she deserves, the father she needs. I stared at him. This billionaire, this man who had everything, offering to be a father to a child who was not his blood, who came from nothing, who had no claim on him at all. "Why?" I whispered. "Because I love you," he said simply. "Because when I look at you, I see my future. And when I think about her, I see myself in a way I never have before. Not as Julian Ashford, CEO, not as the Ashford heir, but as someone who could be good, someone who could be kind, someone who could be worth something beyond the name and the money." Tears were streaming down my face. I did not remember starting to cry. "I love you too," I said. And the words felt like coming home. We were married 6 weeks later. It was not the kind of wedding the Ashfords were known for. There were no 500 guests, no cathedral, no society photographers or newspaper announcements. There was just us. In the garden of the estate, surrounded by purple lilies, the kind that had been in my room that first night. Sujin stood as witness. Dominic officiated, having gotten certified online specifically for the occasion. I wore a simple white dress that flowed over my now prominent belly. Julian wore a suit that probably cost a fortune, but somehow looked ordinary in the golden afternoon light. We wrote our own vows. "I promise to see you," Julian said, his voice rough with emotion, "even when you feel invisible. I promise to listen to you, even when the world tells you to be quiet. I promise to stand beside you, to fight for you, to love you with everything I have for as long as I live." When it was my turn, I could barely speak through my tears. "I promise to believe in you," I managed, "even when you doubt yourself. I promise to be your partner, your equal, your home. I promise to love you not for what you have or what you represent, but for who you are, the man who looked at a stranger and saw someone worth saving." Julian slid a ring onto my finger. Simple, beautiful, perfect. And then he kissed me, and I forgot about everything except the feeling of his arms around me and the flutter of my baby and the impossible, wonderful, terrifying reality of the life we were building together. The fairy tale lasted exactly 7 weeks. I was in the nursery we had been designing together, folding tiny clothes and imagining the future, when Dominic found me. His face told me everything I needed to know before he spoke a word. "What happened?" I asked, my hands frozen over a onesie printed with little stars. "Victoria," Dominic said heavily. "She is dead." The words did not compute. Dead? What? How? "Suicide." Dominic's jaw tightened. "In her cell. She left a note." He held out a piece of paper. His hand was not quite steady. I took it, read the words scrawled across the page in Victoria's elegant handwriting. "You think this is over. It is not. She was never supposed to find you. She was never supposed to save you. But now that she has, she becomes the target. Everything she loves, everything she has built, it will all burn. I made sure of it before they caught me. Watch your back, Julian. Watch hers. The game is not over. It is just beginning." The paper fell from my nerveless fingers. "What does this mean?" I whispered. "What game? What did she do?" "We do not know yet." Dominic's voice was grim. "But we are investigating. Every communication she had, every contact she made, A crash from somewhere in the house made us both jump. Then the lights went out. "Zara." Dominic was moving immediately, his hand on my arm, guiding me toward the door. "Stay close to me. Do not make a sound." "What is happening?" I breathed. "I do not know, but we need to find Julian, now." We moved through the dark house. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in red. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear shouting, running footsteps, the sound of glass breaking. "Dominic!" My voice shook. "Dominic, please, tell me what is happening." He did not answer, because at that moment a figure stepped out of the shadows ahead of us. A woman. My height, my build, my face. My exact face. She smiled, and when she spoke, her voice was my voice. "Hello, Zara," she said. "We need to talk about who you really are, and why you were always meant to find Julian at that funeral." The lights flickered, and somewhere in the darkness I heard Julian scream my name. "Victoria is dead, but her final move has been set in motion. A woman with Zara's face has appeared in the Ashford estate, claiming to know secrets about Zara's past that she has never heard. And Julian is somewhere in the darkness, calling for a wife he might not be able to find. Who is this doppelganger? What did Victoria arrange before her death? And what truth about Zara's origins will change everything she thought she knew about herself? The answers are coming. But they will cost more than anyone is prepared to pay. If this story has gripped your heart, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next. Share this with someone who needs a story that will keep them up at night. The final chapter of Zara and Julian's story is coming, And trust me when I tell you, you are not ready for where it goes. Until next time, keep believing in love, even when the lights go out